Welcome, friends, to another Wolff Responds. I want to talk about a remarkable letter released by Harvard University's President Alan Garber, in which Harvard rejects the demands and threats of the Trump administration, requiring it to audit its courses, its faculty, its staff, its students, basically to look into their political views and adjust what the university is all about. After doing so, the excuse is anti-Semitism. That's just a convenient cover. That is a real problem, but it is not a real way of dealing with it that this Trump administration is using it for. It's using it because the Republican Party has long resented the fact that the college and university system of the United States tends to be liberal and democratic rather than conservative and Republican in its orientation. And Harvard has said, no, it is not going to bend and do what the Trump administration says. And the Trump promised immediately to withhold many billions of dollars from all the various programs that Harvard uses to get money from the federal government. And I want to talk about what that means. I don't want to limit my conversation to congratulating Mr. Garber and whoever at the Harvard Corporation at the top there was willing to say no to Mr. Trump. It is certainly admirable if you look at what Columbia University was doing and what other universities around the country have been willing to do, basically caving in along with the large law firms and so on, wanting to bend and give rather than incur the bad name calling that Mr. Trump will subject them to, and possibly financial penalties of various sorts as well. I should say that I'm a graduate of Harvard, so I am happy that the president of the university did something good. It doesn't happen all that often. When I first went to Harvard, the thing that was most in my mind was that Harvard had fired the leading Marxist economist in the world, Paul Sweezy, or at least the leading Marxist economist in the United States, himself a graduate of Harvard, in line to be an important professor at Harvard, but instead was kicked out in deference to the McCarthyite period at that time in the 1950s. Harvard does not have a good record in this area, never did. But it is good that there is at least something in the way of fighting back. But I think there's more at stake here, and that probably this more that I'm about to tell you about is what drove the Harvard decision. Places like Harvard and many, many other universities have changed over the last 40 or 50 years in a fundamental way. From being basically colleges and universities devoted to teaching, they became huge corporations engaged in many, many other things beside teaching. Often they were running medical schools where the schooling was a minor part. They were basically running hospitals. They branched out into all other kinds of activities. They became research laboratories for the government, which could provide them with money to carry out important studies, for example, for the Defense Department, which gained a lot from it, from American military capability, but from many, many other departments as well. It became part of the culture of American universities, at least the larger ones, to have their professors compete for grants from the government. In fact, they would promote those who were successful at it and often fire those who weren't, building an ever denser network between the government and the universities. And they came to rely on each other. And mostly they thought, and I think they were right, that this was a mutually beneficial arrangement. For the government, it got the resources of highly educated people with a university position, allowing them to do the kind of research that would otherwise have been too expensive, too difficult. And for the universities, it provided them with money, lots of money, to run their universities without bankrupting their students. They weren't very disciplined, the universities, so they jacked up the price to the students too. They were more interested in getting that new gymnasium or getting that new laboratory or getting some shiny new office and classroom buildings, all of that. So they never quite substituted the government money for the student money. They just grabbed it all. But it was a good time for the universities. They could and did grow, and the university provided all kinds of useful services to the government. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is what I began with. The problem is that the university, given what it is, given that it's full of people who at least give lip service to the idea of a free marketplace of ideas, free speech, academic freedom, all of that have some claim in the university, more than anywhere else in our society. And that bothered the conservatives, and it bothered the Republicans, even those like Mr. Vance, who came out of Harvard or Yale or Princeton or any of the others. The conservatives were always a little bit on the defensive. And Mr. Trump, for the conservatives, is, as he likes to say, their revenge, their ability to get back at an institution whose political coloration is a little bit too open-minded for the likes of the conservative businessman mentality that the Republicans prize above all else. And so it's time to go after the university. Even before Mr. Trump, they began to notice, at least in Republican circles, that they could steal an idea from the left. The idea from the left was that universities with huge endowments have no claim for tax exemption. Tax exemption was given to early universities in American history because without giving them a tax-free opportunity, nobody would have set up a university. It's well known. Harvard, Yale, all of them are set up originally as Protestant minister schools, given a tax exemption because you couldn't have had a successful ministry without the schooling, and the schooling couldn't have happened if the school had to pay taxes. But that's long gone. Harvard and Yale don't produce Protestant ministers except in minuscule quantities. And so the left began to say, gee, they ought to pay some tax, being that they're super rich and that they mostly educate the children of the super rich, and that therefore tax exemption is outrageous. That leftist idea got nowhere. Why? Because the universities are full of liberals who did not want to limit what the university had in the way of money and therefore wouldn't pay taxes. So the conservatives took it up, and used it as a battering ram a few years ago to begin to put a very small tax, way less than the rest of us pay, on the incomes that the universities get on their endowments and so on. But now the conservatives found another battering ram, the anti-Semitism argument. Are there residues of anti-Semitism in universities? You bet. Are there residues of anti-Semitism in virtually every other institution in this country? You bet. They're not choosing the universities because it's more anti-Semitism there than anywhere else. No one should be fooled. This is an effort to shut down pro-Palestinian agitation among students, and it's not working. This country will discover that intimidating people with those points of view never shuts them up, not here and nowhere else. May make them go underground, may make them hide, may make them limit where and when they speak, but speak they do. And as the latest Harper's Magazine shows, the percentage of Americans more sympathetic with Palestine than Israel, already a plurality for Palestine, is going up, not down. And this repression is not changing that at all. But it is useful as an excuse so that Republicans can do what Mr. Trump is wanting them to do and what his fight with Harvard illustrated. Change the mood, change the politics, change the ideology of the university. And here's the irony of it all. It will succeed to some extent, even if Harvard doesn't do what the Trump administration wants. All the people at Harvard are getting the message. You will be less likely to get a government grant the more you might be identified as liberal, Democrat, left-winger, anything like that. And that's what they want, to change the atmosphere. But the irony is not that. The irony is, by using money to do it, by cutting down what the university can do by squeezing its budget, you are undermining the very useful link between government and university, and that will weaken both of them in the years ahead. Done for the purpose of the Republican orange president, done for the purpose of the Republican GOP. In the name of anti-Semitism, you are breaking down one of the most useful collaborations the United States government had left. The tariffs are breaking our relations with the rest of the world, and now the purge of the universities is breaking down important alliances and relationships here in the United States. If interventions like these strike you as useful, as part of what ought to be the national conversation, then please share them. That's why we produce them. And of course, if you can see your way clear to helping us financially, that will enable us all the more to perform these functions. Thank you.